Tractate Zevachim, page 38b, top of the page, with the words my lav apalge de mizbeach. This is a continuation, middle of the Gemara's question from the previous Amud of 38a. I'll just read it in English. The Gemara further asks, and is there really no case of that sort? But didn't we learn in the Mishnah in Yoma 58b about the Yom Kippur service? After the high priest sprinkled blood on the four corners of the incense altar, he sprinkled blood 7 times on the taharo of the altar, whatever that is. Now we turn to 38b, top of the page. My lav apalge is be'ach. Inchi tihar tihara diyoma. Amar Rabba bar Sheila lo. Giluye dichtiv uche'etzim hashamayim letoha. What, is it not referring to the middle of the side of the altar, as people say? Clear noon, that is the middle of the day. Tihara, clear noon. Again, remember that. Tihara, Yoma. It's the middle of the side of the altar. That's what the Tihara is. Because people say the middle of noon, Tihara the Yoma. Accordingly, the root tet he resh denotes the middle. In the one case, the middle of the day, and in the other case, halfway up the altar. That's interesting. So tahar or tihar, at first you might think it means tahor, it means like pure, but it means middle. That's interesting. Something is pure is not imbalanced, it's in the middle. Make a connection that way. Okay. It's in the middle of the altar, the tihar, the tihar of the altar, taharo, the taharo shel mizbeach. It's the middle of the altar. Okay. Now, since the blood was sprinkled on the altar 7 times, and inevitably some of the blood landed above the midpoint, and some of it landed below the midpoint. Rabbi bar Sheila said, no, that is not the meaning of taharo. Rather, taharo means on the revealed part, meaning the top of the altar, as is written, like the very clear sky. Exodus 24:10. Oh, interesting. This is more along the lines of pure ke'etzem hashamayim tohar. This is using it more like tahar, like the pure version I was trying to reference earlier. Taharo is referring to the top of the altar, where when it has been revealed after the ashes of the incense are cleared and the pure gold is visible. The Gemara asks again, is there not a case where some of the blood is presented above the red line and some is presented below? But there is the remainder of the blood which is poured on the base of the altar, even in the case of a sin offering, the main blood of which is placed on the upper portion of the altar. The Gemara answers, the pouring of the remainder of the blood on the base of the altar is not indispensable for atonement. Blood that is indispensable for atonement is in no instance presented half above the red line and half below it. V'ha'ika shirayim ha'penimim de'ika deman de'oma ma'akvi echad makam kavino. The Gemara continues this line of reasoning. But there is the remainder of the blood of the inner sin offerings, the main blood of which is sprinkled on the inner altar. The remainder of the blood of these offerings is poured on the base of the external altar. And there is one who says that this pouring of the blood is indispensable for atonement. The Gemara explains, when we said that there is no blood, half of which is presented above and half below, we said this with regard to one place, meaning the same altar, the blood of inner sin offerings is sprinkled on the inner altar, while the remainder of that blood is poured on the base of the external altar. There is no case of blood, half of which is presented above and half of which is presented below on the same altar. Tanya, Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov Omer, Beishamai Omrim, Shtei Matanos Shebechatos, Yachas Shebechol Zevachim Atiros. The Mishnah teaches that according to the opinion of Beit Shammai, in the case of a sin offering, two placements facilitate atonement, while with regard to other offerings, a single placement is sufficient. Beit Hillel disagree and say that even in the case of a sin offering, one placement suffices after the fact. With regard to this issue, it is taught in a Braita that Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov says, Beit Shammai say that two placements in the case of a sin offering and one placement in the case of other offerings, they render the offering permitted for eating, since these actions facilitate atonement after the fact, despite the fact that blood was not placed on all four corners of the altar. Umi paglos v'sirayim achas shebechazes garas shebechol Zevachim ateres umi palgeles. And similarly, they render the offering pigul, that is to say, if the priest placed two placements of the blood of a sin offering, or one placement of the blood of any other offering intending to eat or burn the offering beyond its designated time, the offering is pigul. Beit Hillel say one placement in the case of a sin offering, and likewise one placement in the case of all the other offerings, if done with proper intent, renders the offering permitted for eating, and if done with proper intent, renders the offering pigul. Mat kifla Rav Oshaya, okay, litne gabe kule Beit Shammai, Yechumre Beit Hillel. Oshaya objects to this. If so, let this halacha be taught in the 4th chapter of Tractate Eduyot, alongside the other rare cases of Beit Shammai's leniencies and Beit Hillel's stringencies. According to Beit Hillel, a sin offering is pigul even if the priest intended to partake of it beyond its designated time, even while performing a single placement, whereas Beit Shammai maintained that the offering is pigul only if he had this improper intent during two placements. Rava said to Rav Oshaya, when this question was initially asked, the sages stated their opinions concerning the matter. It was asked with regard to the permission to partake of the sin offering. In other words, the dispute arose as a result of an inquiry into the other relevant halacha, meaning whether the priest may partake of a sin offering, the blood of which was placed only one time. In this case, it is Beit Shammai who are more stringent, as they permit the meat of a sin offering only after two placements have been placed. For this reason, this case was not listed among the other leniencies of Beit Shammai and stringencies of Beit Hillel. Rabbi Yochanan, Shlosh Matanos Shebechatos, Eino Bos Balayla, Ubos Achamiso. Rabbi Yochanan says, despite the fact that, according to the opinion of Beit Hillel, the last three placements in the case of a sin offering are not indispensable to the atonement, they may not be performed at night, because the blood is invalidated at sunset. And these three placements may be performed after the death of the owner. If the owner of the offering died before any of the blood was placed on the altar, the blood may not be placed, and the offering is burned as a disqualified offering. But if he died after one placement, the priest may perform the other three placements, as he has already facilitated atonement by means of the first placement. And as it is a mitzvah to perform these three placements on the altar, one who offers this blood up on an altar outside a temple is liable to receive karet, the punishment received by one who offers a sacrifice outside the temple. Amr of Papa, yesh mehem kitchilaso yesh mehem kesnok. Rav Papa says there are some respects in which the blood of the last three placements of the sin offering is treated like the blood presented at the outset, meaning like the blood of the first placement, and there are some respects in which the blood of the last three placements is treated like the blood presented at the end, meaning like the remainder of the blood of the sin offering. Chutz v'layla zerut u'v'lishares keren v'etzba kibus v'shirayim ketrinos. Rav Papa elaborates. Rav Papa elaborates. Rav Papa elaborates. Ay, 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 ay. With regard to liability for presenting blood outside the temple, and concerning the prohibition against presenting blood at night, and with regard to the disqualification of a non-priest from presenting blood and his liability for death at the hand of heaven if he presents blood in the temple, and with regard to the requirement that the blood is to be presented must first be placed in a service vessel, and that the blood must be placed on the corner of the altar, and that the placement must be performed with the priest's finger, and concerning the obligation to launder a garment on to which the blood of sin offering is sprayed, and finally with regard to the requirement of pouring the remainder of the blood on the base of the altar, the last three placements are treated like blood presented at the outset, meaning like the first placement. But these last three placements may be performed after the death of the owner, and they do not render the offering permitted for eating, as that was already achieved by means of the first placement, nor do they render the offering pigul if during these placements the priest intended to eat or burn the offering beyond its designated time, and similarly they are not governed by the halakha that if the blood enters inside the sanctuary, the sin offering is disqualified. With regard to all these matters, the blood of the last three placements is treated like the blood presented at the end, meaning like the remainder of the blood of the sin offering. Amarav Papa Minamila Titana Nitaz Pinatzavo al Beged Enotaun Kimus Mina Keren Mina Yisod Enotaun Kibus Amina Oila Keren Taun Kibus. With regard to the obligation to launder a garment onto which the blood of a sin offering sprayed, Rav Papa said, from where do I say that this halakha applies even to the blood of the last three placements? It is as we learned in a Mishnah 93a. If the blood of sin offering sprayed directly from the neck of the animal onto a garment, that garment does not require laundering, as the blood had never been received in a vessel. Likewise, if the blood sprayed onto the garment from the corner of the altar after having been placed there, or from the base of the altar after the remainder was poured there, the garment does not require laundering. It may be inferred from here that blood sprayed from the corner of the altar does not require laundering, but blood that is fit to be placed on the corner, as it has not yet been placed, requires laundering, and the blood of the last three placements is indeed fit to be placed on the corner of the altar. Min hayesod kibus ha min haroy leyesod taun kibus אשר יזה כסיב, פרט לזה שכבר גוזל. The Gemara rejects this proof. But according to your reasoning, one can claim, in the same manner, that it is only blood that's sprayed from the base of the altar that does not require laundering, but blood that is fit for the base of the altar, meaning what remains of the blood after it has been placed on the corners requires laundering. This is difficult, as it is written, and when there will be sprinkled of his blood upon any garment, Leviticus 6:20. The future form of the word izeh serves to exclude this blood sprayed onto the garment from the corner of the altar, as it has already been sprinkled. Hamani Rabbi Nechemiah Ditnan Rabbi Nechemiah Omer Shirai Hadam Shehekriva Nochutz Chayim. The Gemara explains, in accordance with whose opinion is this ruling? It is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Nechemiah. As we learned in the Mishnah 110b, that Rabbi Nechemiah says with regard to the remainder of the blood of an offering, which was to be poured at the base of the altar, if one presented it outside the temple, he is liable. Since Rabbi Nechemiah treats the remainder of the blood as blood with regard to liability for a service performed outside the temple, he also treats the remainder of the blood of a sin offering as blood with regard to laundering. Accordingly, Rav Papa's inference from the previously cited Mishnah is valid only according to Rabbi Nechemiah, but not according to the majority opinion of the rabbis who disagree with him. A'emar deshamat Rabbi Nechemiah le'inyan hal'o mididahavi egorim b'dorim kibus mishamos le'in. The Gemara challenges the proof even according to the opinion of Rabbi Nechemiah. Say that you heard that Rabbi Nechemiah ruled in this manner with regard to the offering up of the remainder of the blood outside the temple, just as in the case with regard to limbs and fats. Even though the offering of the limbs and fats is not indispensable for atonement, one who offers them outside the temple is liable. But did you also hear him say this with regard to laundry? That one must launder a garment sprayed with the remainder of the blood of a sin offering? Our answer is yes. We also heard Rabbi Nechemiah rule in this manner with regard to laundering.